So I started a fire and I decided I'm going to start talking about things that I'm afraid to talk about to other people. Mostly because I know it's going to come back and bite me. It always does. But I'm tired of being silent. So back in December, well, before that, for about 3 years, I was living on my mother's couch. You see, my father, he decided to skip, he decided to cut corners. And I say that because I saw his actions later. I heard his excuse, but the thing was, I was always a bad bet to him. I was a disappointment. I was a risk. So I was kicked out at 18 and so on. Anywho, I tried to rekindle with him, around 26 or so. To date, worst mistake of my life. To date. And that's because it triggered a series of events that ended up causing me to be homeless. And then the one thing I was fighting against, tooth and nail, I lost weight. I was living in a hotel and I was driving for 12 hours a day, 10 to 12. But that also leads to just a perfect series of events. And I ended up on my mother's couch. In fact, I joke about the fact that I was a 30-year-old video game tester. But it was a toxic situation. I spent many days telling her, "Ow, that hurts in the morning." Or, "Hey, please don't do that. I don't think the neighbor's kid should see me in my boxers." Among many other things. Very passive-aggressive and very toxic. By the end, it got to where if I said anything out loud while I was in the living room, I regretted it instantly. Like I was kicking myself for it because I knew better. I was watching every word because everything seemed to trigger something, and she was so passive-aggressive with that bullshit. And I was dating the most beautiful woman in the world. In fact, she was my only strength a few times, especially when I wanted to make sweet love to the business end of a phone pole. And I ended up projecting at some point. Like, I lost my therapist. And it actually ended up, it was going to be a mutual separation after just screw up after screw up. And then, of course, when I heard a nurse say, "I've been a nurse for 22 years, or I've been doing this for 22 years, and this, that, and the other," like telling me how the hell I felt and what the hell I was saying and so on and so forth. I mean, they beat me to the email punch, but I already had one typed to say, "You know what, I think I need to step away from you guys." I love my therapist. He was cool. The one before him was even better. But once again, the opinions of others and the presumptions of others took precedent. I've spent my entire life being ignored. Seriously, my entire life. Like, what I say isn't what I said. Or what I did wasn't really what I did. Or there was an explanation for how it happened. Adult lifetime of accomplishments, but I made the mistake of trust and family. And in that toxic situation, living like that for years. Having my business efforts sabotaged just because somebody wanted to nitpick and get in the way and all of that. Like what I'm doing right now is exactly what I was going to be doing, but pre-COVID. Lost that opportunity because I would have become a meme. I've seen it happen. And I'm an easy target because I wasn't that aggressive back then. I'm realizing I have to go back to being a different type of person. Why? Because you guys won't notice otherwise. So what inspired this whole telling my story? My life story since I was 16 and had some incredible events. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep this to myself. And as I started going through and doing crazier and crazier stuff and accomplishing more and more stuff and crossing boundaries left and right, I started building up a story. And I have an incredible life story. And part of it was singing kept me alive. And I kept doing it. So now I've got to impress all of you to make you listen. Make anybody listen. I projected onto the most beautiful woman in the world, most amazing woman in the world, the love of my life. And I was the love of hers. But I started ignoring her, even while she was talking. And I reread every text. I cried. I've cried a lot. And now I don't have any more tears. I faced every trauma because I knew I needed to do that to be the kind of man that she would need. And now I'm trying to move the world. But along the way, I've got a heart for people. I could have dedicated my life story to being an autistic player, or being an autistic player that turned pastor, and all that good stuff. Like, I've had an incredible life. But instead, I chose it initially, to start with, as a way to say I'm sorry, to apologize. Because I know what it's like to end a relationship thinking, what could I have done better? And there's nothing that woman could have done better. She was a saint. She was the closest thing to my grandmother I have ever met. My grandmother was the sweetest, nicest woman I ever met. She was going to be a literal nun before meeting my grandfather. And I grew up to music and Goodwill toys and kindness and somebody willing to teach, having patience. She sewed quilt tops for the homeless. She has a good heart. I lost her when I was 14, and my parents didn't exactly want to pick up the slack. I've had a hard life, and I ended up losing the woman I love the most because of projecting. Years and a lifetime of just hardship. Everything I feared would happen happened when I went to Oregon. I was afraid of all of it, and I knew it would happen, and it sure did. Now my family's being gaslit again because I'm not talking to them and somebody else is. So I'm on a mission to make sure that somebody like me doesn't happen again. So the parents know a little bit of compassion goes a long way to making your lives easier. Because that's what ADA is for. That's what all this autism and all these chemicals are for. These drugs. And all this behavioral therapy. We've been around for thousands of years, but parents want us to fit the mold. And I was a disappointment to my parents. Despite my achievements, despite my accomplishments and what I can do now, I've exceeded both my parents. And they're never going to know. They're too caught up in their own traumas, and that's the thing. Parents that project that shit onto their kids, they're not parents. They're placeholders at most. And I mean, I totally rode the obligation part. Meaning, you know how some parents feel like, oh my gosh, my son's gonna be homeless or else. I totally rode that shit. I definitely rode that shit. Because that's all I had. I was living in a hotel and I lost my income. I didn't have options. Now, looking back, I probably should have gone with my gut instinct and gone to Arizona and just roughed out an Arizona summer homeless, living out of my car. Because out there, I could have made something happen. I still have connections back there. No less than 8 people reached out to the news, at a single news station. No interest in autism during Autism Awareness Month. And my story would make one hell of a Netflix show. True story. Now I've got to figure out a way. And what I'm doing is I'm going to sing in order to get attention and to get things moving on the book and all of that. I never lost sight of any of my goals. And my goals have evolved. The autistic community, I found out that there's so many like me. I haven't met any as adventurous yet, but there's so many like me. Not heard and ignored and just basically bullied around emotionally, and that's not all right. I'm a happy person. I can make anybody laugh. I've spent a lifetime learning how to do it because I like making people smile. I like making people's lives better. And despite all the odds, I'm going to do that. You wouldn't believe the stuff that we've done and that I've engineered. Well, you will, because right now we're doing proof of concept. I've got so much to offer the world, and I have no means to do so right now. So I've got to create those means. On the same token, I'm never losing sight of the original mission. I'm a man with a broken heart and a broken spirit. And I keep on fighting. There are days when I hate myself for it. I hate the fact that I still have hope. Because I know better. I think it's all those damn movies I watched as a kid. I have to keep hoping, but so much of me doesn't want to. I mean, when I was with her, so many people were saying, get somebody. It's just, I never really had positive support. I had more warning support. If you do this, that thing will happen. Or do this, otherwise you're gonna miss out, blah, blah, blah. It's always the negative connotation. My mother told me that when she got calls about me, she always thought it would be them saying I was dead. I didn't earn that perspective. I didn't earn that from anybody. I work harder than anybody I know. And the people that know me know that. But the thing is, so few people know me anymore. And I know myself now. I know who I am. I just toughed through the worst 5 months of my life facing every goddamn trauma I've ever faced. And it was hard. And God, it was hard. You had no idea. You have no idea. No. But I had to do it. I had to do it. Because I had to become a better person. I still got some trauma. But you know what? Do what you gotta do. I've toughed through some really tough shit. And this vulnerability you're seeing right now is basically me recharging my batteries. Because I'm gonna have to look at crowds of people soon. I don't want to. But every step of the past 4 years has been to get closer to the person I love. And part of every step now is to apologize and make sure she knows that there was nothing she did wrong. It was all me. It was my weakness and my exhaustion. This shit hurts. But you do what you gotta do. I'm tired of this fucking emotional pain. It's... Excuse me. Like, the emotional pain is what kills. I mean, first time I had an anxiety attack in Southside Chicago, I thought I was having a resurgence of childhood borderline asthma, acute asthma. And it was just a reaction to just, I'm really, really allergic to pollen and summer and all that. I have real serious, like, the allergies are rough. And you don't know about them much because, I mean, you just live with it. It's not something I'm going to change. And none of the medications, like Zyrtec and all of that, they don't work anymore. They worked for about a year, then my body adapted. My body's always done that. It's why they don't want to give me any sort of penicillin anymore. Because my body adapted to amoxicillin. Too many ear infections. My body adapts to things really quick. And unless you're one of the doctors that have seen it firsthand, you wouldn't believe it. Like, that's the thing is, the more outstanding your life, the less people believe it. And for somebody who's been ignored and, no, you don't feel that, no, you're not going through that, no, you didn't experience that, and all that, that's just rough. It's like insult to injury. And who do I have to blame except the big man upstairs, right? Absentee father. I've had a rough life. It's been outstanding. I've done things that people wish they could do. I've done things that I've never heard of another autistic individual. I'm talking historical review too, because that's what I like to do. I'm just exhausted. And I've probably got the biggest push in my life ahead of me. Like, I'm tired. I'm so tired. Exhausted and just beaten, and I don't feel like I have any moral support. I have people warning me, not people cheering me on. And the people that do cheer on, I mean, it's like half-hearted, it feels like. But then again, I could be projecting my own self, because I would put more into it than they would. Always have. I hate being a humanitarian sometimes. Seriously, manipulating people and working your way up the chain and all that good shit. That was easy. That was an easy life. But moral wounds are a real thing. I can't be insincere to my nature. I like to help people. So I'm going to find a way to engineer helping people for a living. I may succeed in my mission, I may fail. All I know is I have to try.